Hi, and welcome to the Migrant Know Your Rights video series. My name is Vincent Wong, and I'm a human rights lawyer with the International Human Rights Program at the University of Toronto Law School. Today, we're going to continue our video series on different ways that migrants, particularly here in Canada, can get status. And this time, we're going to talk a little bit about temporary status options. So this Know Your Rights video series is brought to you by the International Human Rights Program, along with Butterfly, Asian and Migrant Sex Workers Support Network, and the Immigration Legal Committee of both the Law Union of Ontario and No One is Illegal Toronto. The series is generously funded by the Law Foundation of Ontario. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about three ways that migrants can get temporary status. They are visitor visas, study permits, and temporary resident permits. We are not going to have the chance to talk about work permits today, as that entails its own sort of complicated explanation, but we'll focus on these three common ways. First, as a matter of general advice, it's generally easier to retain status than get status when you are overstayed or out of status. So you should make all efforts to follow the necessary steps needed with your particular visa to preserve the possibility of renewing it in the future. So pay careful attention to the specific requirements of your visa. And if you are planning to renew, then renew early. The first program we're going to talk about is the visitor visa. Now, generally, visitor visas are issued on durations of 6 months at a time, although there is the power from immigration officers to change that and most frequently to make it a little shorter. Many people come to Canada originally on a visitor visa, and in fact, some people come from visa exempt countries or territories and may not need to apply for a visitor visa first. The Canada Immigration or Immigration Refugee Citizenship Canada has a list of visa exempt countries on their website. If you are from a visa exempt country, you'll still need what's called an ETA or an electronic travel authorization to come in. But even if you are here on an ETA and are visa exempt, you are generally only allowed to stay 6 months and then would have to apply for a visitor visa extension like everybody else. If you are reaching the end of your visitor visa duration, you can extend your status as a visitor. And so you'll need to apply for it before your current visa expiration date expires. It's recommended that you apply 30 days before your visa's expiration date. If you have put in your application and are still waiting for a response and your expiration date has gone by, then you have what is called implied status. So you can actually stay in Canada on your original visitor visa status until the government gives you a final decision on whether your extension is approved or not. Then let's talk about eligibility. You have to satisfy several eligibility criteria in order to get a visitor visa, original visitor visa, or an extension. Financially, you'll have to show through documentation that you have enough money to cover your living expenses, including room and board, food, travel, and other necessities during the course of your stay in Canada. In addition, you may be asked to provide a history of or certificate of no criminal conviction and to do a health check if immigration authorities deem it appropriate. But normally, if they don't have any problems with this and they don't ask for it, you do not have to provide these criminal and health checks prior to applying for your visitor visa. And finally, you'll have to show immigration authorities that you'll likely leave at the end of the duration of your stay. And what they look at in order to make this determination is whether you have sufficient ties through, for example, a job or financial assets or family and relatives and community ties that will ensure you go back to your own country afterwards. So those are the things, the major eligibility factors that immigration will consider when deciding whether to approve or reject your visitor visa application. And also you can choose to apply both online and on paper. Online is generally recommended if possible, as it is much faster. The second avenue we're going to talk about in terms of temporary status is study permit or student permit. You have to generally apply for a student visa outside of the country, although in certain situations it is possible to apply when you are already in Canada. You also need to enroll as what is called a designated learning institution, or DLI. And this essentially is a approved kind of school or college or university approved by the Canadian government to ensure that the school that you are going to is a legitimate school. And a list of designated learning institutions can also be found on the IRCC website. Once you do enroll and get approval from the school that you are going to go to, you will also need to meet a similar set of eligibility criteria as the visitor visa application. So again, you have to cover or show that you can cover with your finances, expenses, living expenses, tuition that is associated with your study stay. You may also need to show, to do a criminal check or a health check if asked by Immigration, Refugee Citizenship Canada. And again, you will also have to show that you are more than likely than not to leave at the end of your duration of the student visa. And again, they look for various ties to your home country. Another important aspect of applying for a study permit, if you get it, is that you can actually work on campus or off campus, subject to certain requirements with the study permit. So you can work on campus, generally 20 hours a week, and during the summer, when you are taking a break from your studies or in between semesters, you can actually work off campus as well. The third option we'll talk about is the temporary resident permit. And this is somewhat similar, if you saw our permanent resident video, to the humanitarian and compassionate sort of permanent resident application, in that a TRP is sort of a application of last resort when you are not eligible for other avenues of temporary status, but have a strong reason to justify coming to or remaining in Canada anyway. It's hard to generalize exactly what those cases will be and whether your specific case will be sufficient to get a temporary resident permit. But there are programs that process special cases, And one of those TRP programs is specifically for victims of human trafficking. Uh, Both labor and sex trafficking are widely considered, and victims of family and domestic violence. So if migrants are in those particular situations or those situations apply to them, they may be eligible for special processing to get a temporary resident permit in order to stay in Canada for a temporary amount of time. Again, a lot of times this is 6 months, but it can be longer than that or shorter than that. And it can also be subject to extensions and renewals. There is also a specific program that allows holders of temporary resident permits who are subject to some sort of an inadmissibility in Canada to actually transition to permanent residency if they hold the temporary resident permit continuously without breaking for about 3 to 5 years. And for instance, there are folks who are otherwise medically inadmissible. They may have some sort of chronic illness or have some sort of disability, and they are issued TRPs, but they are found medically inadmissible for permanent residency. But if they continue on with their temporary resident permit extensions for a period of several years, they can apply anyway for permanent residency. And that concludes our module on temporary status. Thank you very much, and we'll hope to see you on the next one.